The medical bay smelled like burnt circuits and regret. I stood there, all four of my eyes blinking independently, because that is what happens when a Vrelnian doctor witnesses something that violates every law of biology we have spent 3,000 years documenting. My name is Krelth, and I have been practicing xenomedicine for 47 standard cycles. I have seen species regenerate limbs, survive vacuum exposure, and metabolize poison for fun. But this was different. The human lay on the medical platform, and calling him a mess would be like calling a supernova a minor inconvenience. His name was Vincent Cooper, according to the datapad that his crewmates had thrust into my claws before running away like their tails were on fire. Not that they had tails. Humans are disturbingly smooth in all the wrong places. So, I said, trying to keep my voice steady while my translator clicked in Word. You are telling me that he fell into an industrial plasma cutter, got exposed to hard radiation for 6 minutes, and then the ship decompressed while he was still awake. The other human, a female named Diana Frost, nodded. Her face was doing that thing humans do where water leaks from their eyes, but they insist they are fine. Yes. And then the emergency bulkhead closed on his leg. His leg. I looked down at Vincent Cooper. His leg was still attached. Barely. It looked like someone had tried to wrap meat around a broken pipe and hoped for the best. The rest of him was a fascinating collection of third-degree burns, radiation poisoning, and what I could only describe as aggressive determination to keep existing. He should be dead, I said flatly. He said that was quitter talk, Diana replied. Vincent's eyes opened. They were blue, which is already unsettling because who needs eyes that color? But more importantly, they were conscious, aware, looking right at me. Hey, Doc, he croaked, his voice sounding like gravel in a blender. What is the damage? I felt my breathing tubes constrict. This was medically impossible. The pain alone should have shut down his nervous system. The radiation should have turned his DNA into abstract art. The plasma burns should have cooked his internal organs into something you would not serve at a reputable restaurant. You are, I began carefully, experiencing catastrophic multi-system failure. A scale of 1 to 10? There is no scale. You have invented new numbers. He laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded wet and wrong and probably involved at least one punctured lung. Can you fix it? Diana asked, her voice cracking. I looked at my medical scanner. It was having what I can only describe as an existential crisis. The readings kept changing, contradicting themselves, and at one point displayed an error message I had never seen before. Patient status. Unclear. Possibly deceased. Possibly not. Please reboot scanner. I can try, I said, which was the most honest answer I had given in my entire career. The thing about human medicine is that nobody really teaches it. Humans are new to the galactic community, only about 50 years in, and they spend most of that time doing things that make other species nervous, like volunteering for dangerous jobs, or eating food that would kill a Glornok in seconds, or apparently surviving things that should absolutely definitely kill them. I called in my assistant, a young Trelevic named Pip, who had 3 heads and therefore 3 times the ability to look horrified. By the ancestors, Pip whispered, all 3 mouths moving in sync. Is that a human? Was a human, I corrected. Now it is a medical puzzle that hates us. Vincent tried to sit up. I pushed him back down with one claw, gentle but firm. Stay still, I ordered. Can't, he said. Gotta check on the crew. The crew is fine. You are not fine. You are the opposite of fine. You are so far from fine that fine would need a telescope to see you. Diana put her hand on his shoulder, which was one of the few parts of him that was not actively on fire or falling off. Vince, please, let them work. He looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. It sounded like air escaping from a damaged hull. Okay, but if I die, tell my brother he still owes me 50 credits. You are not going to die, I said, with absolutely no medical evidence to support that claim. The first priority was the leg. It was attached by what I generously call optimism and some very stressed connective tissue. I had Pip prepped the surgical tools while I studied the scans, trying to figure out how his circulatory system was still functioning when it clearly should not be. This is impossible, Pip muttered, adjusting the plasma scalpel. His blood pressure should have dropped to 0. His heart should have stopped. His brain should have shut down from the pain. Humans do not care about should, I replied. I am learning this very quickly. I started the surgery. The leg had to be reattached properly, the shattered bone reinforced with synthetic grafts. The blood vessels reconnected one by excruciating one. Human anatomy is weird. Everything is in slightly the wrong place. Like someone designed a body using a manual written for a different species. 4 hours in, Vincent was still conscious. "You know," he said, his voice surprisingly clear despite the fact that I currently had my claws inside his leg. "I once knew a guy who got hit by a cargo hauler. Walked it off." "Please stop talking," I said, my concentration fracturing. Docs told him he would never walk again. He ran a marathon 6 months later. That is medically inadvisable. "Yeah, but it was funny." Muntap made a chittering sound. That was the Trevik equivalent of hysterical laughter. "He is insane. This entire species is insane." "Focus," I snapped. But I was starting to agree. The radiation poisoning was next. Standard treatment involves cellular reconstruction therapy, which is delicate and time-consuming and generally requires the patient to be, unconscious. Vincent refused sedation, said it made him groggy. He was worried about being groggy. I administered the treatment in stages, watching his cells repair themselves at a rate that should not be possible. Human DNA has this bizarre redundancy system, this built-in error correction that other species would kill for, and apparently when pushed to the edge, it just works harder. "Your genetic structure is offensive," I told him. "Thanks. I grew it myself." Diana had been pacing the entire time, wearing a groove into my nice clean floor. She kept glancing at the monitors, at Vincent, at me, her face cycling through approximately 17 emotions per second. "Is he going to make it?" she asked, for the 8th time. "I have no idea." I said for the 8th time. "He should be dead. He should have been dead 6 hours ago. He is running on spite and poor life choices." Vincent grinned, which looked grotesque given that half his face was still covered in burns. "Spite is a hell of a drug, Doc." The burns were actually the easiest part, which is saying something because they covered 40% of his body. Synthetic skin grafts, cellular regeneration gel, and a lot of very careful monitoring. His body accepted the grafts like it was ordering lunch. No rejection, no complications, just smooth integration. "This is not how biology works," Pip said, all three heads shaking in unison. "Write a paper about it." I suggested, "Call it Humans, an ongoing mistake." 12 hours into the surgery, I realized we were going to succeed. Not because I was good at my job, though I am, but because Vincent Cooper had apparently decided that dying was inconvenient and therefore not happening. His vitals stabilized. The leg took, the radiation damage halted and began reversing. The burns started healing at twice the normal rate. I stepped back from the table, my claws shaking from exhaustion and existential dread. "You are going to live," I told him. "Told you," he said. "You should not have lived." "Yeah, but I did." Diana made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and threw her arms around him, carefully avoiding all the parts that were still technically broken. He hugged her back with the arm that still worked properly. "You are an idiot," she said. "Yeah, but I am your idiot." I left them alone for a moment, stepping out into the corridor where I could have a private crisis about the nature of reality. Pip followed, all three faces looking pale. "Dr. Krelth," Pip said slowly. "What just happened in there?" "I have no idea," I admitted. "I just violated several fundamental principles of medicine and succeeded anyway." "Should we report this?" "Report what?" "That humans are biologically ridiculous." "They already know that." I pulled up Vincent's file on my datapad, scrolling through his medical history. It was a horror show. Broken bones, 14. Concussions, 7. Exposure to toxic environments, too many to count. And every single time he recovered faster than projected. Every single time he walked away. "They are built different," Pip observed. "They are built wrong," I corrected. But effectively, the next few days were a study in human stubbornness. Vincent was supposed to stay in bed for at least a week. He was up and walking in 3 days. Walking badly, sure, with a limp that would make a Glornak wince, but walking nonetheless. "You need to rest," I told him for the 40th time. I rested. I slept like 6 hours. "That is not rest. That is a nap." "Exactly. I am refreshed." Diana had taken to following him around with a wheelchair, just in case his leg decided to give up on the whole attached thing. He ignored her. He ignored me. He ignored basic medical advice and common sense. "Humans," I muttered to Pip, "are going to give me a stress-related organ failure." "Which organ?" "All of them," simultaneously, but the truth was, I was fascinated. Horrified. Yes. Confused. Absolutely. But fascinated. Because Vincent Cooper represented something I had never encountered in all my years of practice. A species that refused to accept limitations. On the 5th day he was cleared for light duty. On the 7th day he was back on his ship fixing the plasma cutter that had nearly killed him. It was making a weird noise, he explained when I found him in the engine room, tools in hand. You almost died because of that machine. Yeah, but it is a good machine. Just needs some adjustment. I watched him work, his movements still stiff but precise. He knew what he was doing. More than that, he loved what he was doing. Why do humans do this? I asked suddenly. He looked up, grease smeared across his face. Do what? Take risks, push boundaries, survive things that should kill you. Vincent thought about it for a moment, then shrugged. Because we can. Because someone has to. Because if we do not, who will? It was not a satisfying answer. But somehow it was the only answer that made sense. Diana appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of something that smelled like burnt plant matter. Coffee, they called it. Another human weirdness. Making sure he does not kill himself again, she asked, handing 1 cup to Vincent. Someone has to, I replied. She smiled, and I realized that despite everything, despite the terror and the impossibility and the medical nightmares, they were happy. Genuinely happy. You saved his life, she said. He saved his own life, I corrected. I just provided the tools. Vincent raised his cup in a toast. To Doc Krelth, best damned doctor in the sector. That is not a high bar on this station, I said, but I appreciated the sentiment. They both laughed, and for a moment I understood. Humans were not built to survive. They were built to thrive despite everything telling them they should not. They were loud, messy, chaotic, and absolutely unstoppable, and terrifying. Definitely terrifying. I left them to their work and returned to my medical bay where Pip was organizing supplies and muttering about human biology. Did you know, Pip said without looking up, that humans can survive with significant portions of their brain removed? I read a case study. A human had 40% of his brain scooped out and he just learned to compensate. Of course they can, I said tiredly. Why would they not? It is not funny, doctor. I am not laughing, but I almost was, because in a galaxy full of species that had evolved for efficiency, for survival, for perfect adaptation, humans had evolved for stubbornness, and somehow, that was working out for them. The alert came 3 weeks later. Another accident. Another human. Another impossibility. Her name was Rachel Kim, and she had been exposed to a neurotoxin that should have liquefied her nervous system in under a minute. She walked into my medical bay under her own power, apologizing for the inconvenience. Sorry, Doc, she said, swaying slightly. I think something bit me on the mining run. I scanned her. The toxin levels were astronomical. She should be dead or paralyzed or screaming. She was doing none of those things. How are you still standing? I demanded. Honestly, no idea. I feel kinda tingly, though. Pep emerged from the storage room, took one look at Rachel, and all 3 heads groaned in unison. Not another one. Afraid so, I said. Rachel grinned. Do not worry, Doc. I am tough. And she was. They all were. Over the following months, I treated 17 more humans for conditions that should have been fatal. Explosive decompression, acid burns, parasitic infections, blunt force trauma that would have turned a Vrelnian into paste. Every single one of them survived. Every single one of them made jokes while I worked. Every single one of them walked out of my medical bay like nothing had happened. I started keeping a log. Humans. A medical odyssey, I called it. It was part case study, part therapy journal, part cry for help. Entry 47. Patient survived exposure to Class 5 corrosive agent by drinking a lot of water. When pressed for details, patient shrugged and said his stomach was built different. Scans confirmed this is somehow accurate. Entry 63. Patient fell 30 meters onto solid rock, fractured spine in 3 places, was walking within 2 weeks. When asked how this was possible, patient said, I do yoga. I do not know what yoga is. I am afraid to ask. Entry 81. Patient accidentally drank fuel coolant, vomited for 6 hours, made full recovery, said it tasted like bad vodka. I do not know what vodka is. Based on context, I do not want to know. The station commander, a Glornak named Thresk, called me to his office one day. He was concerned. Apparently the medical reports I had been filing were causing panic among the other species. "You are saying," Thresk rumbled, his voice like rocks in a tumbler, "that humans are indestructible?" "No," I said carefully. "I am saying that they are inconveniently durable." "Is there a difference?"
Yes.
Indestructible means they cannot be harmed. Durable means they can be harmed, but refuse to acknowledge it. Thresk leaned back in his chair, which creaked alarmingly under his weight. "This is troubling." "Troubling how?" "We have been treating humans as standard biological entities. If they are not, we need to adjust protocols." I thought about Vincent, about Rachel, about all the others I had treated. "They are not special," I said slowly. "They are just stubborn. Extremely, aggressively stubborn." "That seems like a dangerous trait." "It is. But it is also effective." Thresk dismissed me, but I could tell he was worried. And honestly, I did not blame him. Humans were unpredictable. They took risks that would make a sane species pause. They pushed themselves beyond reasonable limits. And when you told them something was impossible, they took it as a challenge. Back in my medical bay, Pip was updating patient files, all three heads working in coordination. "Doctor," Pip said, "I have been thinking. That is usually dangerous. What if humans are not the anomaly? What if we are?" I stopped, considering. "Explain." "Every other species in the galaxy evolved for stability, for safety. We avoid risk. We minimize danger. We survive by being careful." "Yes. That is how evolution works. But humans did not do that. They evolved in a hostile environment, surrounded by predators, with no natural defenses. They should have gone extinct. Instead, they became the apex predator of their planet." "Your point?" Its three faces looked at me seriously. "My point is that maybe humans are what happens when a species has to fight for every single day of survival. Maybe we are the soft ones. Maybe they are what nature looks like when it stops being polite." It was a disturbing thought, but not an incorrect one. I returned to my work, treating the steady stream of patients that came through my doors. Humans with broken bones and damaged organs and injuries that should have ended them. And every single time, they survived. Every single time they smiled and made jokes and acted like death was just an inconvenient appointment they had missed. And slowly, grudgingly, I began to respect them for it. Because anyone can survive when things are easy. But it takes something special to survive when everything is trying to kill you and you just refuse to die. Humans had that something. In abundance. Vincent stopped by one day, walking without a limp now. His leg had healed completely, better than before if the scans were accurate. "Hey doc," he said. "Just wanted to say thanks." "You already thanked me." "Yeah, but I meant it this time." I looked at him, this fragile, impossible creature, and felt something I had not expected: pride. "You are welcome," I said. "Try not to die. No promises." He left, and I watched him go, wondering what other impossibilities humans would drag into my medical bay. I did not have to wait long. The alarm went off at 3 in the morning. Station time. I jolted awake in my quarters, all four eyes snapping open in different directions because evolution thought that was helpful somehow. The emergency alert was screaming through the comms system, and the voice on the other end sounded niantic. That was bad. Station personnel were trained not to panic. Panic meant something had gone very, very wrong. Medical emergency Bay 7. Multiple casualties. Dr. Krelth, please respond immediately. I was already moving, grabbing my medical kit and running through the corridors in my sleep clothes, which was not dignified but was necessary. Pip met me halfway, all three heads looking alert despite the hour. "What happened?" Pip asked, keeping pace beside me. "No idea. But Bay 7 is where the human mining crew docks." "Oh no!" "Oh yes. We burst through the doors of the docking bay to find absolute chaos. And when I say chaos, I mean the kind of scene that makes you question whether the universe has any safety regulations at all. There were humans everywhere, some sitting, some lying down, some still standing and arguing with each other about whose fault this was. The ship behind them was smoking, literally smoking. Parts of it were melting. The hull had a hole in it roughly the size of a cargo container, and I could see exposed wiring sparking inside like an angry light show. "What happened?" I demanded, approaching the nearest human who looked conscious and coherent. His name was Eric Larson, according to the ID badge hanging crooked on his torn uniform. He had a gash across his forehead that was bleeding impressively, and his left arm hung at an angle that arms should not hang. "Mining accident," he said, like that explained everything. I need more information than that. Well, we hit a pocket of compressed gas. The drill punctured it. There was an explosion. The ship lost power. Life support failed. We drifted for about 4 hours before the backup systems kicked in. I stared at him. You drifted in a dead ship for 4 hours? Yeah. It was cold. Cold, he said, cold. Like it was a minor weather inconvenience and not exposure to near absolute zero temperatures in a metal coffin floating through space. How many wounded? I asked, forcing myself to stay professional. All of us? 12 total. How many dead? Eric blinked. Dead? Nobody is dead, Doc. We are all here. I looked around at the assembled humans. Some were burned, some were bleeding. One woman appeared to have a piece of metal embedded in her shoulder. Another man was coughing in a way that suggested punctured lungs. But they were all conscious, all moving, all very much alive. This is not possible, I muttered. Pap made that chittering laugh sound again. With humans, that phrase has lost all meaning. We set up a triage area right there in the docking bay because moving them all to the medical center would take too long. I started with the worst cases first, which was a relative term because they were all worst cases by any reasonable medical standard. The woman with the metal in her shoulder was named Jessica Torres. She was sitting calmly while I examined the wound, which had penetrated deep enough to scrape bone. Does this hurt? I asked, probing gently. Yeah, but I have had worse. When? Last Tuesday. Bar fight. You got into a bar fight? Well, I finished a bar fight. Some idiot started it. I removed the metal shard, which was the size of my claw and coated in her blood. She did not scream. She did not even flinch. Just watched me work with mild interest. You need stitches, I said. Cool. Make them neat. I got a date next week. Pip was working on Eric's arm, which required resetting the bone. The sound it made when Pip pulled it back into alignment was nauseating. Eric just gritted his teeth and said something that my translator refused to interpret, probably for good reasons. You humans have a very high pain tolerance, Pip observed. We have a very high everything tolerance, Eric replied. It is kind of our thing. Next was a man named David Park, who had second-degree burns across his back from where his suit had failed during the explosion. The skin was blistered and angry, weeping fluids that should stay inside the body. This will hurt, I warned him, applying the regeneration gel. Everything hurts, Doc, you get used to it. That is not healthy. Yeah, well, healthy is boring. I moved through the patients one by one, patching burns and setting bones and treating injuries that would have hospitalized a Vrelnian for months. The humans just sat there joking with each other, complaining about the station coffee, planning what they were going to eat when this was over. It was surreal, like watching people have a casual conversation while their bodies fell apart around them. Hey, Doc, called a woman from across the bay. Her name was Linda Hayes, and she had a concussion severe enough that her pupils were different sizes. You got anything for a headache? You have a traumatic brain injury. So that is a yes on the headache thing. I gave her medication that would have knocked out a Glornak. She took it, thanked me politely, and went back to arguing with David about whether the explosion was his fault or just bad luck. 4 hours later, everyone was stabilized. Not healed, because healing would take weeks, but stabilized, alive, functional, already making plans to go back to work. You cannot go back to work, I said, blocking the exit. Why not, Eric asked. Because you have 17 broken bones between you. Because Jessica has a hole in her shoulder. Because David's back looks like a Glornak used it for target practice. So we will take it easy for a few days. A few days? You need weeks. Months. Possibly. Eric shrugged with his one good shoulder. Doc, we appreciate what you did here. Really, but we got bills to pay. Station does not give us sick leave unless we are actually dying. You were dying. Several times. Simultaneously. But we are not dying now. That is the important part. I looked at Pip. Pip looked back at me with all three faces set in identical expressions of resignation. They are going to do it anyway, Pip said. I know. The humans filed out, limping and bandaged and thoroughly unsuited for any kind of physical labor. I knew they would be back at work within a week. I knew because I had seen it before. I would see it again. I need to retire, I told Pip. You are only 67 cycles old. Yes, and humans have aged me another 50. Back in my medical bay, I updated my log. It was getting quite long now. I had started submitting excerpts to medical journals across the galaxy, though most editors thought I was making it up. Entry 2027. Treated 12 humans for exposure, trauma, burns, and various penetrating injuries sustained during mining accident. All survived. One asked if the scars would look cool. I do not understand this species. Entry 28. Follow-up on mining crew. All returned to work within 6 days. Sent strongly worded message to station commander about proper recovery protocols. Was ignored. Entry 29. Human named Cooper returned with minor infection. Said he forgot to take his antibiotics because he felt fine. Explained that feeling fine is not the same as being healed. He said same difference. It is not the same difference. The truth was settling over me like a heavy blanket. Humans were not going to change. They were built for this, wired for it at some fundamental level I could not understand. They would take risks and survive injuries and push themselves beyond reasonable limits because that was just what they did, and someone had to keep them alive while they did it. 3 months after the mining accident, Vincent stopped by again. He had fully recovered from his plasma cutter incident, with no lasting damage except for some scarring on his leg that he proudly showed off to anyone who would look. "Check it out, Doc," he said, rolling up his pant leg. "Looks like lightning. That is scar tissue from massive trauma." "Yeah. What cool scar tissue." Diana was with him, looking healthier than the last time I had seen her. Her stress levels had decreased significantly, probably because Vincent had stopped nearly dying for a few weeks. "We wanted to thank you properly," she said, handing me a package wrapped in colorful paper. "What is this?" "A gift. It is a human tradition. Open it." I tore the paper carefully, revealing a framed photograph. It showed the entire human crew of their ship, all 23 of them, smiling at the camera. At the bottom someone had written, "To Doctor Krelth, who keeps fixing our mistakes. We appreciate you." I felt something warm in my chest cavity. An emotion I could not quite name. "This is," I began, then stopped. "Thank you." Vincent grinned. "You are stuck with us now, Doc. We claim you as our official medical officer." "I am the station medical officer. I work for everyone." "Yeah, but you are our doctor. That is different." Diana nodded. "You understand us. Most doctors just shake their heads and mutter about liability. You actually try to help. Helping is my job." "No, your job is medicine. Helping is what you choose to do." They left shortly after, but the photograph stayed on my desk. I looked at it often, especially during long shifts, when I questioned my life choices. The humans kept coming. More accidents, more impossible survivals, more jokes in the face of death. There was Marcus Okoi, who survived a shuttle crash by tucking and rolling. There was Yuki Tanaka, who treated a venomous alien bite with whiskey and optimism. There was Ahmed Hassan, who walked off a broken spine because sitting around was boring. Each one was a new lesson in human durability. Each one was a new entry in my log. Each one made me question what I thought I knew about biology. I had started a side project, compiling all the human cases into a comprehensive medical guide. "So future doctors do not panic," Pip explained. "That assumes future doctors will believe any of this. They will learn, like we did." One quiet afternoon, rare and precious, I sat in my office reviewing patient files. The station was calm. Nobody was dying. Nobody was bleeding. It was almost peaceful. Then Vincent walked in and I knew immediately that peace was over. "Hey Doc," he said, "got a minute? For you? I am beginning to think I should block out entire days." He laughed, sitting down across from me. "I have been thinking. That sounds dangerous." "Yeah, probably. But listen, you have saved a lot of human lives on this station, more than you probably realize. It is my job." "Sure, but you go beyond that. You actually care. You learn about us. You do not treat us like we are weird." "You are weird." "Okay. Yes, but you treat us like we are weird in a good way." I leaned back in my chair, curious where this was going. "What is your point, Vincent?" "My point is that humans talk. Word spreads, and a lot of human crews are requesting transfers to this station specifically because you are here. They know if something goes wrong you will fix it." I had not known that. The station population had been growing, I noticed, with more human ships docking here than at other facilities. I assumed it was economic. "So, I am a selling point?" "You are the selling point, Doc. Humans trust you." Trust. Such a simple word. Such a complicated concept. I just do my job. I said quietly. No, you do more than that, and we appreciate it. After he left, I sat alone in my office for a long time thinking about trust and humans and the strange path my career had taken. I had wanted to be a doctor because I believed in helping others, in healing, in making a difference. When I started, I thought that meant perfect procedures and textbook diagnoses and controlled environments. But humans had taught me something else. They taught me that medicine was not about perfection. It was about adaptation, about doing your best with impossible situations, about caring enough to try even when success seemed unlikely. They were messy and reckless, and frustratingly durable, but they were also brave and loyal and determined. They faced death like it was an annoying coworker, and kept moving forward. And somehow I had become their doctor, their advocate, their first line of defense against their own terrible decision-making. The alert came 6 months later. Another emergency. Another human ship. But this time it was different. The message was garbled, breaking up with static. Hull breach. Life support failing. Multiple casualties. Request immediate assistance. I grabbed my emergency kit and ran for the docking bay, Pip right behind me. But when we arrived, the ship was not there yet. We waited, watching the empty space beyond the airlock, tension building with every passing second. Where are they? Pip asked. Coming in now, the docking controller said. But Doc, you should know. The ship is barely holding together. They lost main power 30 minutes ago. They are running on emergency batteries. The ship limped into view, and limped was generous. Half the hull was gone, torn away by something massive. The remaining structure was twisted and scorched. It should not be flying, it should be debris, but it was still moving, still fighting, still refusing to give up, just like the crew inside. The ship docked with a grinding crash that made everyone wince. The airlocks cycled open, and humans poured out carrying their wounded, supporting each other, moving with purpose despite injuries that would have stopped anyone else. We need trauma bay now, I shouted into my comm. All hands, this is a mass casualty event. The station medical team assembled quickly. Vrelnian nurses, Trelevic assistants, even a Glornak surgeon who specialized in heavy trauma. Everyone working together. We triaged in the corridor. Red tags for critical, yellow for serious, green for walking wounded. I kept waiting to use the black tags, the ones for deceased patients. I did not use a single one. Every human on that ship was alive. Hurt, yes. Some barely conscious but alive. There was Captain Jennifer Brooks, who had stayed at the helm while her ship fell apart around her, steering them to safety with a broken arm and 3 cracked ribs. There was Engineer Paolo Rossi, who had manually sealed the hull breach from the inside, exposing himself to vacuum for almost a full minute before his suit failed. There was Medic Thomas Wright, who had kept his crew stable with a field kit and sheer determination, treating injuries that would have required a full surgical suite anywhere else. They were all impossible. They were all alive. We worked through the night. Surgery after surgery. Procedure after procedure. The entire medical team pushed to their limits and beyond. But we saved them. Every single one. When dawn broke over the station, I stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. My claws were shaking from exhaustion. My breathing tubes ached. But I felt something I had not felt in a long time. I prayed. Purpose. The knowledge that I had made a difference. Pipe found me there. All 3 heads drooping with fatigue. We did it, Pip said softly. We did. They are going to be okay. Yes, because they are human, and humans do not quit. Neither do you. I looked at my assistant, this young Trelevic who had grown so much over the past year, who had learned to expect the impossible and treat it anyway. Neither do we, I corrected. The humans recovered, as they always did. Faster than expected, stronger than before, ready to get back to work long before they Captain Brooks cornered me in the medical bay 2 weeks later. Dr. Krelth, she said formally. I wanted to thank you for saving my crew. You saved your crew, Captain. You kept them alive long enough to reach the station. We worked together. That is what I came to talk to you about. She handed me a datapad with an official-looking document on it. What is this? A proposal. The human colonial fleet wants to establish a dedicated medical training program. Teaching doctors across the galaxy how to treat humans specifically. We want you to head it. I stared at the document. A prestigious position. Good pay. The chance to make real change. I would have to leave the station, I said. Only part-time. You could still practice here, but also travel, teach, share what you have learned. You have more experience with human medicine than almost anyone in the galaxy. That knowledge needs to spread. I thought about Vincent and Diana, about Rachel and Eric, and all the others I had treated, about the humans who were coming to this station because they trusted me. I need to think about it, I said. Take your time. But Doc, you have changed a lot of minds about humans. Medical staff used to refuse to treat us. Said we were too unpredictable. Now they are learning. Because of you. After she left, I looked at the photograph on my desk. 23 smiling humans who had trusted me with their lives. I thought about Pip's words from months ago. About how humans were what happened when a species had to fight for survival every single day. About how they were not soft or cautious or careful. They were fighters, survivors, impossible, stubborn, beautiful survivors, and I was their doctor. The galaxy needed to understand humans, not fear them, not avoid them. Understand them. Someone had to teach that. Someone who had learned the hard way that human medicine was not about following rules. It was about breaking them when necessary. I made my decision. 3 months later, I stood in a lecture hall on a core world station, looking at an audience of 200 medical professionals from 50 different species. They were skeptical. I could see it in their eyes, their posture, their carefully controlled expressions. I am here to talk about humans, I began. And I am here to tell you that everything you think you know is probably wrong. I showed them case studies, images, videos, data that proved humans could survive things that should kill them. They are not indestructible, I explained. They are not immune to damage. They just refuse to accept defeat. Their biology is built for resilience. Yes, but more than that, their psychology is built for survival. They will keep fighting long past the point where any rational being would give up. A Glornak surgeon raised his hand. How do we treat a species that does not follow normal medical rules?
You adapt.
You learn. You accept that sometimes the patient will recover despite your prognosis, not because of it. You trust them to know their own bodies, even when it seems impossible. A Vrelnian nurse asked, but is that not dangerous? Should we not follow established protocols? Protocols are guidelines, not laws. Use them when appropriate. Ignore them when necessary. The goal is always the same: keep the patient alive and help them heal. How you achieve that can vary. I taught for 6 hours straight, answering questions, sharing stories, explaining the 1,000 small lessons I had learned from treating humans. At the end, the skepticism had not vanished, but it had shifted, changed into something like curiosity, understanding, willingness to learn. It was a start. I continued teaching while maintaining my practice on the station, traveling to medical schools, training new doctors, building a network of professionals who understood human medicine. Vincent and Diana had a child 2 years later. They named her Hope, which seemed appropriate for humans. I delivered her myself in the station medical bay with Pip assisting. She was tiny and loud and perfect, and when she opened her eyes and looked at me, I felt that warm feeling in my chest cavity again. She is healthy, I told them. Thanks to you, Diana said, tears streaming down her face again. Thanks to all of us. Hope grew up on the station, surrounded by humans and aliens working together. She was fearless, like all human children seem to be. Curious. Always asking questions, always getting into trouble. And whenever she got hurt, which was often, she would come to my medical bay with scraped knees and bumped heads and say, "Fix me, Doc Krelth." And I would every time. The years passed. More humans, more impossible survivals, more cases that expanded my understanding of what biology could do when pushed to the edge. I never stopped learning, never stopped adapting, never stopped being amazed by the sheer stubborn refusal of humans to die when they were supposed to. My log grew into volumes. My teachings spread across the galaxy. Human medicine became a recognized specialty, respected and studied, but I never forgot where it started. In a medical bay on a small station, with a patient who should have died but decided Tuesday was not a good day for it. Vincent stopped by occasionally, older now but still the same. Still joking. Still surviving. "You did good, Doc," he said during one visit. "Changed a lot of things." "We did good," I corrected. "All of us." "Yeah, we did." He left, and I returned to my work. Another day, another patient, another chance to prove that impossible was just a word. Because I had learned the greatest lesson humans had to teach: never give up, never accept defeat, Never let impossible be the end of the story. Keep fighting. Keep adapting. Keep moving forward. That was medicine. That was life. That was the human way, and I was honored to be part of it.